The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Coaches, good afternoon. My name is Chaz Henry, and I am the founder of PowerChalk.com. I'm also a 12-year Little League baseball coach. I've coached both of my sons from T-ball up into middle school, and unfortunately my run is very likely over as I hand my youngest son off this year to middle school coaching. So today's topic is teach your son hitting. I hope you're going to find some insights in my presentation today, but you're also going to find some resignation in my message. You really don't do anything for 12 years without learning, and some of what I've learned may on the surface sound discouraging. So let's start with what I would consider some of the limitations. Now, I assume that a fair amount of the audience here are fellow coaches, and one of the things I've learned is our practices start about 4 weeks in advance of the season, and we have 2 one-hour practices per week. So one of the things I've learned is you really can't become a good hitter in 8 minutes. If you do the math here, you've got 120 minutes of practice. I've got 15 kids. If you haven't seen my webinar on running an effective practice, I encourage you to go on youtube.com/powerchalk and just search for the word effective, and you're going to find my philosophy on running practice. I run practice in stations. I've got every kid doing something at every minute of every practice. There really is. One of my feelings about coaching is you can grade. One of the measures of your practice is how much standing around time. These kids need 0 standing around time. I mean, if you're running wind sprints, you want to let them catch their breath, but that's about it. You need to keep them moving and keep them doing fundamentals. But if you do the math, 120 minutes of practice, 15 kids, we've got 8 minutes of BP. So 8 minutes of hitting. And the bottom line is you're just not going to turn your kids into hitters in 8 minutes in 4 weeks. And what you know as coaches, and especially if you're coaching at the rec league level, is that your coaching, your sessions, your 2 hours a week are pretty much all the baseball that they're doing. So the other epiphany is you can't teach 15 kids to hit in 4 weeks. Again, it's just a fact that it takes thousands and thousands of swings to develop a good stroke. A lot of what I found about the hitting stroke is not intuitive. I mean, there's a certain amount of things the body will just figure out a better way to do things, and it does that constantly as we rake leaves or as we hit balls in a batting cage. Our body figures out certain ways, but I found in golf and in baseball, some of the ways that your body wants to get to that ball, they're absolutely not intuitive, and you've got to work at it. So the other thing I found, and this is part of my overall philosophy, you can't coach hitting in the games. I mean, if you didn't get your work done before the game, then it's not done, and you're not going to change somebody's batting stance. You're not going to change, the fact that they're leading with their hands and not their hips. You're not going to do that at game time. The other epiphany is if you don't get any of the above done, you're probably not going to be a good hitter, because what I absolutely believe is that you are not going to be a good hitter without good mechanics. So I know a lot of you are going to say that's let me just tune out now. That sounds like a real wet blanket coach. It sounds like you're old and you're jaded and you really need to be out of the game. But let me switch gears for you. I just finished a book, and this really reinforces a lot of what I've come to believe anyway about coaching. A book by Jeff Colvin called Talent is Overrated. And what Jeff Colvin, he bases a lot of his research on some neuroscientists who have studied experts at piano, experts at the violin, experts at hitting, at pitching, at basketball, at golf. And one of them wrote a seminal research paper that said it takes 10,000 hours of work at your particular craft to make you expert. So if you do the math, that's 3 hours a day for 9 years. So if you go back to my other slide, you realize I don't have that much time. If I don't have 8 minutes, then I certainly don't have 3 hours a day. But there's good news here, and that is that these elite athletes, these elite players, it's really a function of hard work over time. Now the good news is these 10,000 hours, that equals professional baseball. That equals an MLB player. That's really not our goal, and it's not achievable, for us rec league baseball coaches. The good news is you can get a long way, toward being elite within your own group by just having good practice and practicing good mechanics more often than the other guys. Now, turns out there's a blueprint. According to Jeff Colvin, there's a blueprint for that, and it's called deliberate practice. And what deliberate practice? I highly encourage this book, but deliberate practice means that you stretch. I also have coached hockey, and what I found is if you set up the cones and you run kids through the cones and it makes them lean 15 degrees and they can all do it, you need to spread them out, and you need to make them lean 18 degrees. And that's really what deliberate practice is. Deliberate practice is pushing the envelope of the skill sets that they already have. If you practice something that you can already do, then you're really building stamina. You're not building new skills. And the idea here is to build new skills. So that's really what deliberate practice is. And so we'll talk more about that, and I'll get into some of the telestrator side. But again, the good news here, the positive message is you can develop talent and expertise in any discipline, and it's really just hard work. And like I said earlier, these small improvements will help you outclass your opponents. So that's really what we're trying to do here, is we're trying to outrank our competitors. I'm not all about winning. This is all developmental, certainly at the level that I'm coaching. But it's, part of our job is to do our best. And that implies we're asking each kid to do our best, and our team is going to do our best. And that means we're going to outrank our opponents. So, one of the messages in the books is please just don't read this. You need to implement, improve, and thrive. And that's really the goal here. So here's the next epiphany for me, and that is that drills are the answer. One of the things I've done, and for obvious reasons, I'm big on video and the telestrator, and I'm big on showing kids what the model is. Here's the way you're doing it, and here's the model. Here's a Major League Baseball player. Here's what great mechanics look like, and here's what your mechanics are currently. So drills are the answer, and parents are the key to that. So one of my messages today, and then part of what's the hidden meaning behind Teach Your Son Hitting, is what you're going to have to do as a coach. You can't teach all 15 of your kids to hit. You just don't have the time. You're going to have to deputize your parents, because the bottom line is no one cares more, no one believes in their particular kids more, no one has the time and energy or the influence that they do. So instead of, and it's really a new way of thinking about this as a coach, instead of you taking on the responsibility to teach all these kids hitting, you're going to need to deputize your parents. If you could get all of your parents involved in the process, and you could get them to have their kids do the right drills, then you're going to end up with 15 kids who can hit. I mean, that's just my philosophy and the conclusion that I've come to after 12 years of baseball. Now, to underscore that point, let me show you, and if you've never seen this is not the best video in the world. I'm going to switch over to the telestrator, and I pulled up a clip here of Tiger Woods. Now, this is Tiger Woods on the Mike Douglas show at age 2. So let's bring him out here, and I'll fast forward to, this is Mike Douglas. He's with Tiger Woods and Bob Hope. And now let me get to right here, and I'll draw the classic swing plane lines with the telestrator. Here's the outside swing plane above the shoulder, and here's the inside swing plane. And I'm going to take Tiger. Now this is only 15. You notice here, this is only 15 frame per second video. Like I said, it's not great video, but look at this takeaway. Look at this move at the top. I mean, incredible flexibility, but look at his head position. Look how steady his head is, and then watch him bring this club down right in the middle of those two lines and drive that ball straight off the tee. Now what amazed people about this is not how far this little guy was hitting the ball. He's 2 years old. But the fact that he had pro mechanics. So here's a kid at 2 exhibiting pro mechanics. And that's what made Tiger Woods. That's why Tiger Woods became Tiger Woods. All right, so it's never too early to get these pro mechanics. Now, let me rewind a little bit, and there's the guy in the orange shirt. That's Earl. That's Earl Woods. One of the things that Colvin says in his book is all of these great players have crossed paths with an expert. There's a talent trail that you can find if you'll interview or you'll do the background research on almost any major league player. they have crossed paths with someone who got them on a path to good mechanics. And that's really what I'm suggesting, is that we as coaches deputize our parents to do that, and we do it via the telestrator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back into the telestrator, and I'm going to pull up one of my guys. So this is one of my hitters on my team this year. And what I did is very simply, I took his swing, and I'll play it through in slow motion. This is Rainier, and Rainier was a very good hitter. And he's got good mechanics. I mean, there's some things that I can show you here that are just exemplary mechanics. And he's got some issues. He's got some things that we'll need to fix, and that he'd want to fix to be a really great hitter. He's already a very good hitter. So you see him go through in slow motion. And you'll also notice these little tick marks. If you notice where my cursor is, these little gray ticks, they're what's called keyframes. Went after a very high pitch there. Rainier had very good timing, very good hands. I mean, he was a free swinger, but he went after the ball and got it. Now, what I've done with him, let me pause that. What I've done with him, and what I would suggest, if you can get your parents to just, just get an account, start filming, whether it's batting cage or off the tee, and then go through. If you don't know anything about the baseball swing, you can go through and you can pull this tab back, and I can pull it forward and forward, and I can find what I would consider his stance. So anywhere in there might be his stance. It's really it's kind of the pre-swing, whatever he does. Now, I had said his stance is frame 97. Now, it's as easy as if I really say the stance is somewhere in here. Maybe I want to show him how he wiggles his bat. I can set that to stance equal 44. Okay, and you'll see it change there. But what I basically do now, load for me is kind of the backmost position. So when he starts right there, his bat gets back to about right there. So I found pretty much the same place, load equals 120. So you get the idea. When I click that button, I now find the point at which he plants that foot. And there's, now Don Slaught of Right View Pro would call that toe tap right there, toe touch. Okay, the reason we don't call it toe touch is a lot of times guys will plant with their whole foot. So we have a distinct different step, which is the heel going down, and he calls that heel plant, but we call it weight shift. So in the case of a guy who plants flat-footed, there'll be a distinct difference between the first time it touches and when he really moves the weight onto that leg, which he's doing right now. So there's weight shift. His hands get to a point, which is the back pocket. When his hands get to this part of his uniform right here, that's back pocket. Now you notice what I'm doing here, and what I'm suggesting that you get your parents involved in, is I'm not doing anything to critique his swing. I'm just literally finding the spots, and now he's at front pocket. So his hands have gotten to his front side, or what we call front pocket. Now again, and we'll start through this, this is going to become a series, and we'll start through it next time, but we're going to start talking about what should I be looking for at front pocket? What should I be looking for when he's at back pocket? What should I be looking for at contact? One thing you want in contact is to contact the ball in the strike zone, but that's a whole other discussion. So let me draw the strike zone. These are all valuable tools. If I draw the bottom of his armpits to the top of his knees, then we could also talk to him about and visually show him that he's looking for balls and he's looking to bring the bat into that zone. But for now, like I said, we're just really taking his swing, and we're trying to get our parents involved in taking the swing and breaking it down. Now, part of what we're doing when we do all of this is we're getting the parents for the first time in a conversation. We're starting to talk hitting. We're starting to talk philosophies of hitting, whether you're rotational hitting. Now, you notice he's got a very linear component. And again, I'm not passing judgment on any of this. Every MLB hitter in the world is both linear and rotational. Okay, so he's definitely got a linear component. When he moves through the zone, he's creating momentum, and he's creating more rotational ability, by the fact that he moves his head through the zone, that he goes linear. But now notice that when he finally sets, when he gets positioned around that leg, he becomes very rotational. Not perfectly rotational, but very rotational. Still some linear movement. But again, these are the things that we want to engage our parents and get them on board with us. Let's all start coaching and believing the same things, but let's have the parents come back and start working with their kids on these moves. So you can see here, I walk through these, and I was showing there that I can create my own keyframes. If I want to add keyframes that don't necessarily, line up with a pro model, I can just hit the plus key and put down other keyframes. So this, maybe this section or this video clip had 2 at-bats in it, so I could delineate, where the second pitch starts. So again, keyframes are just something that, they can have particular names, or they can just be freeform, like I show there. But once I've got that, I'll save it. And now that puts me in a very good position, and that's really not part of the scope today, but very good position to load B and compare him against a pro. With that, let me go back to our outline. So with keyframes as the model, this is the discussion. This is the process that we need to get our parents in, and we need to start developing drills. So again, one of the things that, and let's go back to the very start of it. I'm going to erase all of my markup here, and we're going to pull Rainier back to the start. And I've got some kids that really are not comfortable in getting ready for the pitch. In getting ready for the pitch at a point where they're balanced. They've got weight on both legs. I've got kids who want to start too soon. I've got kids who start too late. So these are the kind of things that we can develop drills, and that's what we're going to start on the next time, is start to develop some drills that are just stance related. I mean, just to sit there and waggle and waggle and waggle and get yourself to the point. So it'd really be all of this, what I would call pre-swing from Rainier. Now you notice he gets, he's up much higher, and then he flattens out quite a bit. So these are things we want to integrate. I'm a firm believer that you don't start from a dead stop. Part of the bounce that you'll see when he gets to the point where he gets to the back, he's going to get a little bounce. The fact that he went back, and you notice one of the things I believe too, is that as the front foot goes forward, the bat goes back. So those two are winding like a coil. But these are things that we can create little drills. And through the season, what we'll want to do is create drills for each one of these phases. Each one of these phases we'll do over and over, independent of hitting a ball. One of the things I found in my golf game was going out and hitting balls for hours at a time. It really was a detriment to my golf game, because I get so focused on the result. If I had a day where I was putting, striping them down the middle, then I tend to believe that the motion that I was using to do that was correct, and it's not necessarily true. So I think one of the things you want to do as a coach is you want to develop these drills, and you want to make them independent of the result, independent, of what you're getting out on the field, when you're hitting or not hitting these baseballs. So that's really what I'm preaching here, is that it's about the drills. It's about the drills, and it's about lining these drills up with keyframes. So one of the things we really believe, it's about deliberate practice, and then these drills contribute to the deliberate practice. You're also going to find that you're not going to be a great hitter, without certain core, posture, strength, flexibility, some things that these drills will also enforce. So I've come to the belief over my years that we spend far too many hours throwing batting practice to our kids, and not enough hours building the fundamentals that lead to good batting practice. But I also believe in parent-based training. On my team every year, and you're going to have a bell curve. You get 15 people together in any endeavor, and you're going to find that you've got a bell curve. That you've got 3 kids who probably won't be great baseball players. You've got 3 who are already great, independent of your efforts or your wisdom. They're going to be great, and that leaves 4 in the middle. So really, we're talking, 7 of these guys who have just huge potential if we can get the parents involved, get them to be part of the team. We already, as coaches, we ask the parents to cover snacks and drinks, and we ask them to, bring their glove and man a station in our practices. And, really what I'm suggesting is that we engage them further, that we get them all in our hitting program. And we start as coaches to talk about hitting fundamentals. And we start talking about drills that they can do with their bat in the garage, and ask them when they show up for practice who did their homework, who took the 50 swings, who took the 50 toe touches, who just brought their bat back up behind their ear. 100 times to just get in that load position. And repetition is the key. You know, I've said this to my parents. You know, parents bring their kids to you, and they're looking for knowledge. You know, not all of them played baseball. Not all of them have swing mechanics, you know, in mind, and they're looking to you for that knowledge. And, you know, what I've come to believe, it's probably about 5% knowledge and about 95% repetition. And I'll give you an example. You take Cy Young Award winner Randy Johnson, and you ask him to throw a baseball right-handed because he's a lefty. I mean, he would throw it like a girl. I mean, he would throw it, I would imagine, you know, just like any of us would throw it if we switched hands. It would look like Frankenstein. It would have all kinds of hitches, and it would it looked pretty clunky. So you got to believe he's got all the knowledge, but he doesn't have the reps. He doesn't have the repetition with that right hand. So, you know, part of what we're doing here is we're trying to take these kids on a scale of 10. We're trying to take them from 0 to 5. You know, part of my job is, as I hand my younger son off to middle school baseball, you know, part of my job is to hand him off with some good fundamentals. Now, his coach may have some different ideas about hitting mechanics, and that's fine. It's, you know, he's out of my hands now, but I hope to pass him off with some good fundamentals. And I believe that for most of these kids is video, video, video. They've really got to see it. They've got to see what good mechanics look like, and more important than that, you know, I didn't improve my golf game much by watching Tiger Woods. I could see what good mechanics looks like, but until I see myself trying to do those mechanics, I really don't know what I've got. So I believe that's a fundamental element of it, is video, not just of pro mechanics, but video of you. Because the bottom line is that practice makes permanent. You know, practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. A lot of my kids have hitches, and they have moves that even after I've shown them, you know, themselves compared with Pablo Sandoval, with, you know, with great hitters and great mechanics, they come back the next practice, the next game, and they do the same thing over and over. So until we work those things out, until we work them out through drills, they're really not going to take root in the swings of our kids. So with that, let me move on to questions. Like I said, we're not going to talk. I'm not going to get into, you know, trying to break down this swing or, you know, do the comparison. Today's message was really just to espouse the philosophy that it's about the parents. You cannot do enough as a coach to teach all of your kids to hit. It's about teaching your son to hit. So part of my message, I've already got a message that says, surely you're not excluding the girls. I've had girls on my teams, and this absolutely, the same thing applies. I mean, that's kind of a blanket title. We as Power Chalk are about to start creating a series of instructional videos. You know, one of the things we believe is we've put a tool out there that's going to help you use these videos to further your kids' mechanics. But you know, we probably haven't done enough, and we're seeing a real need for the model videos. So that's really coming. That's coming from Power Chalk, and it's part of why we want to introduce this series. But when we do, it'll also be teach your daughter fast pitch. It'll be teach your daughter hitting. There are some nuances, you know, between the softball swing, you know, and the baseball swing, and especially with the mound being so close. You know, there's some differences there. But with that, let me start taking a couple questions. Are there websites that offer good fundamental hitting drills? Well, soon that's going to be Power Chalk. Like I said, we've made a real concerted effort to incorporate drills into the site. So we'll be producing some of that content. Other than that, I'm not a aficionado of what else is out there. I'm certainly willing to broadcast on our next session some sites if you guys want to tell me what you found in the world to to give good drills. Next question, Sal, what type of camera do you use to photograph your player? The graphics are excellent. I've probably got 20 cameras, and right now I'm using a camera from ION, I-O-N, that's called The Game. I really just found it on their website, ioncamera.com, and one of the reasons is it's kind of a point of view camera. It's a lot like a GoPro, but it's got an LCD on it. One of my problems with the GoPro, takes great images, but I don't know what I'm shooting. Unless I pull my iPad out and I use it as my, as kind of my preview screen, and I don't always want to do that. I just want to pull it out, take 2 swings, and put it back in the box. Then the beauty of it is it takes 60 frames a second. Now, you can also take video with your iPhone, your Android, but they take 30 frames a second. Those extra frames are what you're saying are, as part of the clarity that you saw in those images. Larry, what key things do you emphasize with the parents as to what mechanics work with their players? What I like to do, there's hundreds of swings out on the site that you can find, out on PowerChalk.com. One of the things I like to do, I grew up in Cincinnati, and I could imitate, the entire Big Red Machine. I can imitate Joe Morgan and Tony Perez and Pete Rose. Pete Rose had the crouched, flat bat stance, a lot like Ranier did. His bat was flat out. And, I think the key is if you let the kids pick what they like, that's going to work for them. And as long as you're emulating pro mechanics, I'm not sure that it really matters which pro you're emulating, but I think you want to. You're going to find so many commonalities between all of them. When they all get the knob pointing to the pitcher, I mean, that bat is still within a baseball distance of their back shoulder. They haven't cast their hands. Those are the kind of things we can start to reinforce to these kids as they take their swing, is that, no matter who you pick, there's things that they all do. So time allocation between soft toss, Scott, and live hitting, I think the answer there is if you're taking good swings, I mean, I'm certainly not advocating that you don't hit baseballs and you don't go into the batting cage and you don't, do soft toss. I think you do as much of that as you can. I think what I'm advocating is that we make sure that we're not in there grooving a bad swing. And that's what I did with my golf swing. I spent a year absolutely grooving a bad swing, and by the time I sought professional help, or saw my swing for the first time on video, and I, even with what I knew about swing mechanics in golf, I knew when I saw my swing that I was doing it wrong. And then the real shocker for me is how much time I'd spent doing it wrong and how much I had to undo. Also a note from different Scott, LittleLeagueCoach.org has good hitting drills. It's free. Good point. Absolutely. LittleLeagueCoach.org is a great resource. A lot of hitting drills, and they're reinforcing these kind of mechanics. From Dave, what are your thoughts on time invested in kids that go to other coaches, either the same league or middle school, high school, in regards to that coach unwinding everything you've taught? That's a tough one, because I've had that too. My kids have played on a lot of teams where I was not the coach, and I'm not the ultimate coach. I think it's a lot like life. It's a learning opportunity, and it basically starts discussion, and discussion is always good. I mean, what I found in my old age, if there's an A and a B position on an issue, the answer is probably C. The answer is probably somewhere in the middle. And I think if a coach says, I don't want you dropping your hands at any cost, and then you go look at Josh Hamilton, who makes a huge circle. I mean, his hands go down, and they take a big circle, but they end up back at the top. So what he does, Jake Epstein, who was on one of these sessions, his dad Mike, the father of rotational hitting, said, I don't care if a guy does a backflip, in the batter's box, as long as he gets to the following position. And we brought, the guy on the screen to a great load position. So again, that's just an opportunity for discussion. And you can say, hey, I know the coach says this, but, the real question for me is, are you ending up in this good position? So again, I would just treat that as an opportunity to, to have that discussion, to find out who you're trying to emulate, what your model is. And then I think it's also a way to go back to that coach and say, hey, coach, we're working with this other guy, and here's some of my video. Turn him onto the video and say, let's discuss it. Let's go back and forth, and let's try to find that middle ground. He actually feels more comfortable doing this. You tend to like this. But these are also pro mechanics. He's ending up in a good load position. So, again, discussion and some back and forth, some compromise, and really going back to your kids that, to say what feels good for you, what works. So last question, Jerry, how many reps do you recommend for hitting off the tee? Again, I don't think there's any hard and fast limits. I will say this. I mean, back to, talent is overrated. I mean, the goal here is not to have our kids put in 10,000 hours, and become experts. if they get on that path, if they show the kind of interest and ability, that a lot of them do, then you certainly want to feed that interest and ability. But I think the key here early is how much attention span do they have for it. And us as parents and coaches to make sure that the time they do put in is well spent. In other words, they're practicing good mechanics in there, because if the average kid gets his 8 minutes and yours is putting in 30 minutes a week, you're gonna see 3 times the results. I mean, if you're investing that time with good mechanics, you're going to see good results. And again, back to Dave Colvin, I would say if you're doing deliberate practice, if you're taking some of that time and you're working on drills, or you're working on core strength and posture and balance, things that stretch, the entire, the entire fundamental set of skills that you need to hit, then you're going to be in much better shape. So coaches, with that, that's our time today. Whether you agree or not, with the premise of this, I hope you found this session thought-provoking. I hope you found it something that you can start to, maybe incorporate some pieces and parts, just like we talked about hitting. Maybe all of this doesn't ring true for you. But now that we're out of season, we're out of Little League Baseball season, we're running these sessions just once a month. So I hope you'll tune in next time. I'm going to continue this thread by starting to build on a program where we start to bring in some of these drills. Maybe we go back into the keyframes and we say, here's a drill for step 1, here's this drill for step 2. And, I'm a firm believer that you don't have these kids, really focused on step 8 if they don't have a fundamentally good stance. If they're not getting loaded, I mean, it's game over. So I think that, we can start to explore some drills that start to teach your son hitting. So again, coaches, thanks for tuning in. I hope to see you next time.